doing interviews. You'll find her with celebrities and all the latest news. She's here, she's there, she's everywhere, she's always on the go. So sit back, relax, and get ready. This is the Corey Taylor Talks Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corey Taylor Talks live from Las Vegas. I am joined by an amazing guest that I am truly so excited and honored to have on. I have Mr. William Keck, as you can see. He is the author of When You Step Upon a Star, Cringeworthy Confessions of a Tabloid Bad Boy, which I think is a great name, and you can actually see it in the background for him right there, the beautiful book. But it's such a capturing name, and I read all about you, and I think you're amazing. I can't wait to read your book. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited to have you.
Well, thank you. It's available for people like you to get in advance. So as soon as you're ready, we'll have my publicist send you a copy so you can read it. I'm excited for you to read my secrets.
Oh, I would love to. I am excited. And I'm excited to talk about some of them today, because obviously we can't talk about all of them because we have to save some for the book. But I would like to know a little bit of the backstory and everything. But as I was explaining, you just have this amazing career. You're a journalist, and you've done so many different stories and interviews with a million different celebrities, and and you worked with like the Inquirer and People magazine. I mean, just so many major publications. But why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I came to California in the 90s, and my idea was to become a screenwriter. And so I got a job pretty quickly. I was very lucky working for Aaron Spelling Productions, and Aaron Spelling did Dynasty and 90210 and Melrose. So that was a pretty cool thing for me. But I got a little impatient, and an opportunity came up to work at the National Enquirer. And I knew that this would be a gateway to meet all of my favorite celebrities, especially the older legends who I knew weren't going to be around too much longer. So I jumped in, and then suddenly in my early 20s, I was a tabloid scum, breaking into cemeteries and hospital rooms and weddings. And so I guess the lesson there is be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, no, I mean, you definitely had a very controversial past, but I mean, you're the ones that we always read about for years and years and years. But I think it's so cool, and you really you learn from your mistake, and like you said, you were in your early 20s, and that whole time frame was just such a different period, and people really didn't understand a lot of what we kind of understand now and how we look at celebrities and their personal lives. So I think it's amazing that you did turn it around, and now you became friends with a lot of these celebrities, actually. And I think you're just such an amazing man, and I can't wait to hear a whole bunch of stories from you. I'm sure you have a million.
Well, what was wild was I was doing the regular celebrity stories at the Inquirer, and then everything changed 30 years ago in June of 1994 when the OJ murders happened. And all of a sudden, the Inquirer became this joke to one of the leading breakers of news. And so actually the introduction to my book, the opening chapter into my world, is about my first assignment with the O.J. Simpson murder case, when I was sent to interview Nicole Brown Simpson's family just days after she was buried. And that was really kind of like playing spy and a little like working for the mafia, because I was an awful thing to invade this grieving family's private world by sneaking into their gated community. But my editors were sort of like the mafia, where they were just pushing you. You can do it. Go for it. You can do it. We believe in you. And then with all that encouragement, I found myself outside of Nicole Brown Simpson's family home, knocking on the door and being led in to meet her mother and sisters, who were sitting around a photograph of Nicole grieving. So that was the story I decided to open the book with. Yeah.
Now, I'm fascinated by the OJ case, because it was actually before I was alive, but I'm so fascinated. I'm so interested in true crime and everything. But that was a horrible case. Now, you said you just kind of like by chance they let you in, so it wasn't like a pre-setup thing or anything? Like
no, nobody did pre-setup interviews with the Inquirer at that time.
I guess
no, I tried a few things. I tried flower delivery. I tried grocery deliveries, and I was turned away by the guard. And so I was about to give up. And then right next to this gated community was a Ritz-Carlton hotel. And so I parked my car in the Ritz-Carlton. I valeted. I was in a suit and tie, and I went down to the beach. And I walked, gosh, I don't know, half a mile down the beach. And I was outside the gates to the compound where her family lived. And so I jumped the gate and I roamed through the neighborhood until I found the house with the address I'd been given. And that was the invitation. But listen, you know, I say this smiling, and I'm fully aware that this was a horrible, horrible thing to do. And I actually referenced in my book, Kim Kardashian a few years ago was hosting SNL. And in her monologue, she was sort of making fun of this whole case. And I just found that very interesting because her mother, Chris, was friends with Nicole. And the fact that it was a joke really sort of, gosh, for lack of a better term, cut me the wrong way. And I wanted to really let people know, like you who weren't alive then, what a really horrible thing this was. And I realized at the time that it was a horrible thing I was doing. But what happened was kind of surprised with that. When I went into the home, Mrs. Brown took my hand, Nicole's mother took my hand and said, "Thank you so much for coming. How did you know my daughter?" And so I never thought I would get this far. So I started by saying, "Listen, I'm so sorry to invade your privacy. I'm with the National Enquirer." And the whole family sort of stood up at that point and walked me toward the door. But this family was really anxious to tell Nicole's side of the story. Everything was focused on OJ. And so Mrs. Brown ended up giving me a very sentimental story about how she told her grandchildren, how she told Nicole's children that their mommy was gone and that she now had these angels that were going to be looking after her. So the story came out. The Brown family was very happy with how the story came out. And that established a rapport between the Browns and the Enquirer that lasted for many years. And they worked with the Enquirer to get Nicole's story told.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And, you know, like you said, even to this day, it's still so focused on OJ and stuff. And it's all about the case and how insane the trial was. But you rarely hear about Nicole and her family and him. It's so horrible. But I think it's amazing that you were there and able to establish, like you said, establish a relationship, bring her side of the story and put more attention on her, because that's who we need to focus on is the victim and her family and her kids. I mean, it's just horrible what happened to them. It's completely unimaginable.
Horrible, you know, and so I established that relationship, and I was more than happy, though, to hand that off to other reporters because I didn't want to become a murder reporter. I didn't want to become a true crime reporter. I wanted to work with celebrities. So others handled that situation while I moved on to stories about Farrah Fawcett and Betty White and TV stars that we all grew up loving.
And so was that one of like the times when like you started to realize what was really kind of going on and started to change, or was there like a specific moment that happened where you realized like, oh, maybe this isn't the best thing that I'm doing and this is kind of affecting people's lives? Like when was that like particular moment?
That's a great question. So I had always given myself 3 years. I said, if I go more than 3 years, I'm going to become a lifer. I'm going to be like these other people. And the people there were great. I really enjoyed working with them. But they'd been there 20, 30 years. And I knew that I didn't want to be a lifetime National Enquirer reporter. So as it reached the 3-year mark, it was kind of getting antsy. And I was in New York. I was coming back from a wedding on Staten Island. And they had put out the new Enquirers on a newsstand. And I was excited to see if one of my stories made it onto the front page. This was before the internet. So you really didn't know what was going to be on the front page until you saw the front of the Enquirer. And none of my stories were on there that I'd worked hard on. Instead, the main image was a photograph of an old actress who passed away a couple of years ago named Raquel Welch. And she was just kind of looking very sadly down into the ocean, having a day like we all have, just kind of a down day. But they made it seem like she was despondent, and it almost looked like she was going to jump off this bridge. And I decided at that point that I did not want to be profiting off the pain of others, because I suffered with depression in my own life, and the last thing people need is to be taken advantage of, you know. So at that point, I told the Enquirer editors that I didn't want to do any more negative stories, only positive stories. they said, okay, you can stay for half your salary. And I said, thank you very much, but I think I'll move on. And I did.
Well, that's good. And you did. It's kind of interesting, like that, just that one particular photo and stuff. I mean, that's when you kind of really started to realize. I mean, I'm sure it's multiple things, like you said, like with Nicole and everything, but like that, it's so interesting. Like that was kind of like the key turning point. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's amazing. And I think it has gotten a lot better from what I can tell, but I'm sure you have a lot more insider knowledge than I do. Do you think it's kind of improved now with time and people being more aware, or do you think it's just as bad as it was?
Well, it's interesting. You don't see the Inquirer like you do, and I
Right.
wasn't exactly sure if it was still in publication. It is, but it seems to be abandoned. You go onto their website, and there's a story about an actor from The Godfather, James Caan, on why he can't find the right woman. Well, James Caan's been dead for like 3 years, so this is one of the last stories they posted. I went onto their Instagram.
Wow.
I think they have one posting, so I don't know what exactly is going on with the Inquirer, but
Right.
TMZ is now the new Inquirer. So
Yeah.
TMZ is there invading people's privacy, waiting for them when they get off the planes at the airport, going to their homes after their house has been broken into, waiting outside hospitals. So there's been a shift. But a big game changer is that celebrities are breaking their own news now. We go onto their social media. They want to build up their following. So they're breaking news instead of allowing people like me to break the news instead.
Yeah, that's true. That is a good point. And it is kind of them kind of taking back the power, but then also building their following and their outreach with everything, and they control the narrative. So that is true.
Exactly. Exactly. That's right.
And I like you said, you have so many amazing moments, and you've interviewed so many incredible people, and you built these relationships with a lot of them. Do you have one in particular that like really, really stands out to you in the most memorable way?
Oh my goodness. I mean, so
I'm sure it's
many.
a hard question.
Yeah, no, it is. So the book is sort of divided up into 4 sections. The first section is about disturbing the dead. So those are all the stories about when I was going into people's funerals and hiding in trees, to find out who was coming to the funerals. So those people I didn't really meet because they were in a coffin. The next section is called the down and dirty section, and that's sort of the salacious things. For instance, one story is about Kelsey Grammer, who plays Frasier. The show is Frasier is back on the air now on Paramount Plus. And at the time, I was investigating him. He was really a bad boy. My title says bad boy on my book, but he really was the bad boy. And so I was uncovering a lot of his secrets. And so he was engaged to a woman, Tammy Belashevsky, who was kind of trying to become an actress. And they were on Oprah and talked about how happy their marriage was. Well, behind the scenes, Tammy was miserable in the relationship and was actually giving me stories about Kelsey.
Oh, wow.
And Kelsey's brother was also giving stories to the Inquirer about Kelsey for money. So what was nice about this is I shared the chapter with Kelsey. He chose not to respond. I fully understand that. He's done a lot of work on himself as I've done work on myself. I wish him the best. He's doing great. But Tammy, his ex-fiance, chose to respond. So she does a whole page she contributes a page in my book talking about her life now, and she reveals how Kelsey actually broke up with her via their therapist. That's how he ended the wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Wow.
Which caused her to have thoughts of suicide. So I was very happy to reconnect with some of these people who I'd known in that world to see how they've grown since that time. She was trapped in a very unhealthy relationship. She's very happily married now, has a beautiful ranch. She cares for horses. So it was really fun for me to catch up with these people who I knew back then under darker circumstances.
Yeah, what made you like decide to write a book now? And I think it's amazing, and it's kind of cool that you did get to catch up with these people, because I'm sure you tell these stories and you think about them here and there, but then like to actually go, oh wow, this is them now, and now we can kind of build this relationship together and everything, which is amazing. But what made you actually start to write the book now?
Well, I've been working on it for a long time. I saved everything. I saved all my reporter notebooks. I saved all the photographs that I took. There are over 200 photos of celebrities, a lot of them me with celebrities, in the book to kind of prove that I was there at that time. I saved the tape recorded interviews with all these people, but it was like, when am I going to get a chance to take the time to listen to all this and go through these notes. Well, then COVID hit. So I sat in a garage and went through every clipping of every article I wrote, and I decided what was worth including in a book, what wasn't quite as exciting. And then ultimately, I chose to include stories that were action-oriented. When I was sneaking somewhere, or when I was, I was caught and escorted out of someplace. So things that were very visual. So it reads sort of like an action book.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I have such bad like social anxiety and stuff. Like, how did you overcome
Wait a
that?
minute, I don't understand that. You're hosting a show and you have social anxiety. I can't understand that.
I put on like a persona and stuff, but like I hate like I'll tell you a story of my
Great.
own.
Good.
When I was a very little kid, I shouldn't have been, but I was obsessed with The Simple Life and Paris Hilton in particular. And I was like 6 years old, and which not great, but it is what it is. And we found her house. They had the Hollywood map of the stars, and it had their addresses and everything, which I'm sure you're well aware of. And so we went in front of her house, and we pulled in front of her house, and I was 6, and I was panicking, and my mom's like, "What's the worst that can happen?" So she's a lot like you. But since I was 6, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But her maid came out and she saw us, and my mom's like, "I have 3 little girls here that love her, would love to meet her." And then Paris came out later, and she was the nicest person in the entire world. She took photos with us, like she was out there for 30 minutes. Like she couldn't have been nicer. But I thought that was so cool. But like I can't explain how petrified I was in doing that, and so
That's
I
an
can
incredible
imagine you like
story.
put it off and everything.
That's a wonderful story. I love to
Yeah.
hear that. And I agree. Paris Hilton, she's a lovely, lovely person with a big
Nicest
heart.
person in the world.
There
Yeah.
were no cameras on her. This wasn't for a story that was going to be reported. It was a private moment, and she gave that moment to you. There is a photo of me with Paris in the book, and we're on a bed together with several of her chihuahuas. And I went to her Malibu home to do a doggy fashion show because she had a new line of doggy fashions out. So we had a little red carpet, and she walked the chihuahuas down. It was very cute. But yeah, I also love The Simple Life. I interviewed Nicole Richie and Paris for season 2 of the real life of The Simple Life. And
that's why.
yeah. So you can read what I write about them, but I got a little naughty with them in the article, but I'm going to save that for people to read the book.
Oh, absolutely. No, but I think it's awesome. But I can't imagine like being escorted off property and getting caught. And like, you're in trees and you're climbing gates and hopping fences. I mean, was that crazy to you? Do you look back on that and go, "Oh my gosh, what was I thinking?" Or,
I am proud of myself because I was sort of a shy kid, even though I faked it, I guess, like you.
yeah.
I was shy, and I look back and I'm like, how did I do those things? And that was the right time in my life to do those things. There was a legendary singer named Dean Martin. He was part of the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. And so Dean had a very tragic final years of his life. He had lost his son in a plane crash and pretty much drank himself to death. And whenever there was a slow news week, they would send me to go to his favorite restaurant to sit with him and get an update on his life. And we did several of these stories called Brave Last Days, the brave last days of Dean Martin. And we kept on getting it wrong. He kept on living, even though we said he was about to die. And then we all took off for Christmas break, and he died during that time, and we missed it. So we made sure that I was there for the funeral, and so we knew he was getting his tribute was happening at Westwood Memorial Cemetery, and so I was sure to get there earlier in the day, and I was pretending to be a mourner at a grave, but it was a VIP event. So these guards came and just cleared everybody out of the cemetery. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I'm walking the perimeter of the cemetery. There's a big wall, a cinder block wall. And I noticed there was a tree that extended over the wall. It was a tree that was on somebody's property, a private resident. And so I knocked on that person's door and I rented his tree for the evening for $500.
Oh my
And
gosh.
my photographer and I climbed up into that tree and waited for the mourners to arrive.
Yeah.
And so in a short amount of time, we saw Don Rickles and Tony Danza and all these legends coming to bid him farewell. And it got dark, so my photographer left, but I stayed up there, and I was able to hear George Clooney's aunt, Rosemary Clooney, a classic old-time singer, singing one of his favorite hits, That's Amore. I had my own private concert under the moon as a crasher, a funeral crasher.
That's brilliant. That's throughout the tree on someone's property. That's insane. That's so smart. I had to ask. This is a shot in the dark. What was the restaurant that you ate with him at his favorite restaurant?
Oh gosh, it was called La Familia. La Familia.
Oh, okay. Because I have cousins in LA, and they were very, very close to him. And he even gave them like their dog, and they named him Dino. But it was Carmine's too. It was in Santa Monica, or just Carmine's. It was on Carmine's.
You know, he had a couple favorite Italian restaurants, and when one
I was like, oh, I wonder if it's that way.
maybe, yeah. He had a couple. One would close, and then he would find another one.
Yeah.
But I love how our lives are in sync here. With
Dean we're Martin. Meant to be. We're meant to be friends.
Who else do we know in common?
I know, right? we knew each other to another life. We're all connected in all different ways.
Maybe. Yeah, I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, I'm sure, like you said, crazy stories and climbing up the tree. I once again, brilliant renting the tree on someone that faced the funeral. That was brilliant. But
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Funniest story you have, is that one of your funny stories? Is there like a really funny story you have?
Oh gosh, yeah. There's a lot of humor in the book. That was really important for this to be a funny book. Well, getting back to Kelsey Grammer, who I just terrorized for so many years. To find out about his home life, instead of breaking into his home or his property, I stole his garbage. So I found out what was the garbage collection day where he lived. And so I stole his garbage. I took it back to our offices, our Enquirer offices on Sunset Boulevard. And it was late at night. And I ripped open the bag and I put all the contents all over the place. And I'm going through things. And there really wasn't anything incriminating. There were some porno VHS boxes, but I mean, who even knows if that was his? It could have been his gardener getting rid of those. But while I was going through the things, I noticed that there were these little white squirmy things going in all directions from one of his leftover steaks. So I had to run down to grab a vacuum cleaner from housekeeping. And so I come back and the maggots are everywhere. And I thought, how ironic that the Enquirer offices were infested with maggots. I mean, George Clooney
maggots.
a field day with that.
Or Casey Grammer, gosh, oh my goodness. That is hysterical. That is absolutely hysterical. Oh my goodness. And gross at the same time.
and gross. I mean, there was another story I was on assignment for People magazine. We talked about The Simple Life. There was another show called The Surreal Life, where they would take a bunch of B-list celebrities, put them in a house together and see what happened. And so I was sent to, I think it was season 3 of The Surreal Life. And one of the residents that year was Tammy Faye Baker. I don't know if you know who Tammy Faye was, but Jessica Chastain played her in The Eyes of Tammy Faye and won the Academy Award. So Tammy was a devout Christian. She had been married to a minister. It was a big scandal. So what they did to surprise Tammy was they took her on a surprise trip to Palm Springs to a nudist colony. So I was there with Tammy when she entered this mystery building, and a man came from around the corner to check her into this hotel and had no pants on. So Tammy burst into tears. I had to console her, and the producers of the show were furious at me for jumping into the scene at this critical moment that they'd spent hours setting up and expense. So yes, I had some of Tammy's mascara on my shoulder.
That's hysterical. Do you have like because obviously we worked with so many of them. I was reading too, like I think like Bruce Willis even said how much he hates you and everything. Do you have a celebrity that like hates you the most that you're aware of?
Oh gosh.
Too many to count.
No, really not. And so you bring up an interesting point. You said this at the beginning. So for a variety of reasons, I chose to reach out to a lot of the celebrities in the book to give them a chance to see what was going to be written, to see if they wanted to respond. And some did. And so that really led to some healing conversations. Not everyone chose to contribute a commentary, but one of the ones who did was Marsha Cross. Marsha Cross from Desperate Housewives. She played Brie Vandekamp. Lovely woman. So she was actually the first celebrity I reached out to. And what happened with Marsha was. I was invited to her house to do a story on her home life, to meet her new twin girls. And the morning of the interview, as I was driving to the interview, I received a text from a friend who said, "Did you see the story that broke about Marsha Cross?" And I'm like, "Oh gosh, oh no, what?" And this wasn't for the Inquirer. This is for USA Today. So this was a setup, on the record interview.
Right.
And so on Perez Hilton that day, photos had been released, naked photos of Marsha that had been taken without her permission. So I had this dilemma: do I bring this up
Yeah.
and ruin the whole interview, or let it go? And it's sort of like having an angel and a devil on your shoulders, and the angel saying, "Don't do it, don't do it." But the devil, who still had a bit of the Inquirer in him, said, "Just go for it." So at the end of the interview, I did bring it up, and it just changed the whole tone of this entire beautiful day. But I reached out to Marsha, and she said, "I really remember the beautiful day that you came to the house. I don't really remember that moment that well." But she said what she did remember is how invaded she felt about those photos being taken. She had paid, I think, $10,000 to have them go away, kind of blackmail, and they came back. But she gave me her blessing. She said, "Don't worry about it, Will. You torture yourself. Move on, like I have." So I think that I've been a little tougher on myself than some of them have been on me.
No, but that's really cool that you guys were able to talk that,
Yeah.
and she did
Yeah.
give you her forgiveness. 'Cause yeah, and like I said, I think now we're so much more aware of mental health and, like I said, and people's backgrounds and what they're really going on in life, and we have absolutely no clue half of it. So, I think it's really great that we are more conscious, but, back then, you don't really think about it. It was so sensationalized, and it was so invasive, but and like you said, it's wrong, but you're like, well, this is the story and this is what everyone's gonna ask, so I gotta ask it, and that's also kind of your job. So it is, but I'm so glad you were able to learn, and like you said, and heal and talk it through with them, and really, like you said, get that forgiveness and understand, like,
Yeah.
you were so young at the time, you were in your early 20s, and you're Hollywood, and that's your whole dream. You wanted to meet them, and here you are, and it's very
Yeah.
overwhelming for you.
Yeah, and I try to be fair. I try to share secrets of my own. Since I was exposing all these celebrity secrets, I'm like, it's about time I shared my own secrets. You mentioned mental health. I have a chapter in there about Courtney Cox, and I went to sit with her for an interview about whatever her movie was. It was a TV show, and during the interview, it came up that was suffering from postpartum depression,
Mm.
and she said in the interview that she was driving on Mulholland, and in her mind, she had this thought of, what would it be like if I just turned the wheel and went off the cliff and ended it all? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a big story, because this is right after Friends wrapped. Courtney Cox was a huge, huge star. And sure enough, all the tabloids picked it up, and Access Hollywood, it was their lead story of the day. Courtney Cox considered suicide, and her publicist was furious with me.
Mhm.
Um, she wished I'd given her a heads up, at least, to let her know it was gonna be out. The problem there is that the minute I give them a heads up, the publicists, they work all their magic to make these things go away.
Right.
And she said it. I had never met Courtney before. The tape recorder was rolling. It was an on the record interview. I felt it was fair. But in this chapter, I talk about my own battles with mental health, the ends of relationships, feelings of insecurity, getting plastic surgery. So I'm fair game too, and I talk about sort of how I was able to come out of that with therapy, with medication, and a lot of hugs from friends.
Yeah. I think that's amazing that you're able to open up too, about it. A lot of people wouldn't, so I think that's really cool. But it kind of gives you different perspectives too, and like it shows you're
Yeah,
going on too. That's why everyone is going through stuff, and we have no idea, and that's why we need to treat everyone
yeah.
more respectfully, and really kind of try and look at the world from their perspective. And I think that's so brilliant about your book, to bring that up and really show all points of view.
Yeah, people change, and a lot of celebrities have applauded that. I'm very grateful to have about a page and a half of quotes of support from all different celebrities saying, you know what, thank you for having the courage to come out with these confessions about your life and showing us that anybody can change.
And obviously you can't contact or talk to every single celebrity and stuff that you felt like maybe you did wrong or whatever. Is there like a biggest regret you have? Like one of your biggest regrets you have with that, one of them?
Mm, mm, yeah. Gosh, I think the regret really is that I unnecessarily stirred the pot a lot of times,
Yeah.
looking for scandal when there wasn't a need to find scandal. I remember I was doing an interview with the new Charlie's Angels cast, new being 20 years ago, right? I mean, Drew Barrymore,
Yeah.
Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu, and it was a lovely, intimate interview, and they were there to play with me and talk, and I just brought up some really invasive questions that were none of my business. The questions that you're taught as a child, you never ask people about their salaries, about their ex-husbands. It was completely inappropriate to do that, and I regret that. It was another time I was sitting down with the cast of Lost, one of my favorite shows. Are you a fan of Lost? Did you ever get to watch Lost?
I never watched it, honestly. No, I
Yeah,
haven't.
it was such a fun show. Plane crashes on an island, and all those secrets come
Yeah.
out. And I talked to them about the plots of the show, but then I went around asking them about their personal lives. And one of the actresses had just gone through a divorce. Like that week, she had filed for divorce. And so I brought that up in this interview with her co-stars, which thinking back now, it feels inappropriate. And she actually burst into tears and ran away from the table. I felt awful about that. So yeah, there are things I regret for sure.
Of
For
course.
sure. And that actress, though, we're friends again. I mean, that actress, it was very personal, so she chose not to write a commentary, but
Yeah.
we've worked together since, and we're buddies. We follow each other on social media.
That's really cool. I think that's awesome that you were able to reconnect with so many of them and make amends with everything,
Yeah, thank you.
Because yeah, and like it just shows your growth. And like I said, you were so young, and everyone looked at the world completely differently back then. It's like I was like, I can't believe I grew up in like the early 2000s. It was so insane how everything was, and and you look back at it now, you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how invasive it was. But that's just how it was, and no one really thought twice about it. But I
Yeah.
think you bringing attention to it and really showing your side and how it was back then, and now how you changed, and you're able to connect with these celebrities, which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And when I told that story about that actress Raquel Welch, who was captured looking
Yes.
sad on that same issue, the two other stories that week. One was about Rosie O'Donnell, I think it was, how she couldn't stay out of gay bars. And, I mean, that was the Inquirer's way of outing people. They would never say so-and-so is a lesbian or gay. They would say, oh, why can't Ellen stay out of gay bars? And here I was at that time, closeted myself, keeping secrets about my own sexuality. So how hypocritical that I was in a position of exposing other people's sexuality and being lying about my own sexuality. And the other story on that horrible issue was about it was a morning talk show host named Joan London. She was a host of Good Morning America, and one of her friends had died in a plane crash, and they were sort of insinuating that they had a relationship. And I just looked at all this and I'm like, ew. This is not me. This is not who I want to be. And at the same time I quit the Inquirer is when I started the process of coming out to my friends and family.
Wow. That's amazing. I just think it's so cool that you really were able to recognize everything. Yeah, there's so many stories now, and it's so hard to keep track. And like you said, TMZ is insanity, and then there's like Des Moines, and that's the social media version of it. Do you think like a lot of these stories are true, or do you think a lot of them are completely made up or sensationalized? What are your thoughts on like now?
Well, based on the way it was at the Inquirer, I can tell you that we worked very hard to get the truth.
Yeah.
I was sent to Aspen to follow John Kennedy Jr. and his wife on the slopes to find out if she was pregnant. I got a room right down the hall from theirs, and every time they put their food out, I would go just check to see if she was drinking alcohol, to see if she was pregnant. So I mean, they sent us to Hawaii and to Europe to get these stories. What happened was, though, we would write these stories, and it was never enough. The editors wanted to be more salacious. So what they would have us do is invent quotes. For instance, Nicole Kidman told a friend, it's driving me crazy what Keith Urban does, and so they could really invent any quotes they wanted to by saying so-and-so told a friend. They weren't saying it was true. They were saying somebody said it about somebody else.
Right.
And also a lot of it, we would file our stories and they would be sent down to Florida. And there were three kind of mysterious older men that would take our reporting and turn it into their own. So if two people were living together, they were about to get married. If somebody had a cough, they were about to die. Everything was just expanded to make it sellable. And these would be the quotes on the cover. And I would read my stories and go, oh my gosh, where did that come from? That's not what I reported. So
Right.
truth, but tweaked for sensationalized effect to sell magazines.
Yeah, and since like you said, you really did try to make it as truthful and possible and stuff, and obviously other people were sensationalizing it far more than it needed to be. But did anyone ever like try to come after you? Anyone try to sue you?
Yeah, there was
That you could talk about?
So there's one chapter in the book, and I was sent to somebody's home. It was a 90s sitcom star is all I
Okay.
can say. So I name everybody in the book, but there's one chapter where, for legal reasons, I couldn't name this individual.
Gotcha.
But this individual was not happy that I was at their home asking about possible infidelity, and this person beat me badly
Oh my
outside of
God.
their home. And so there was there was some legal situations that happened there. And in that particular chapter, instead of identifying the person, and I can't show the person's photo, I replaced that person's image with photos of me wrestling a bear, actual photos of me wrestling a bear. And that was the other part of the Inquirers. They would do these bizarre stunts,
Oh my God.
sending a 25-year reporter in to wrestle a grizzly bear. And so I thought it was kind of fun, since I couldn't name the person and show their face, to instead replace unnamed celebrity with Bogey the bear.
Insane.
Yeah.
My goodness. Wow. That's that's crazy. But I get that's just another lesson, right? But I think that's cool that you fought a bear at least, and you could say you survived that, right?
I could name the bear, yes, and I knew the bear wouldn't sue me.
There you go. Exactly. They can't talk, so you're good.
He might eat me.
Right. Right. You're far away. You got time. You're good.
Yeah, Bogey's probably not with us anymore. I think he's probably gone to that great cave in the sky.
Exactly. Now, I know you have met, I'm sure, so many of your heroes and stuff, and people you were idolizing and stuff. Is there anyone, if you could interview anybody dead or alive, who would it be?
Wow. I do like that question. The one person that sort of propelled me to LA, I grew up in New York, and the person who died, who really rattled my world, was somebody I always wanted to meet, and it was Lucille Ball. Lucy,
Oh, yeah.
I love Lucy. I really would have loved to have interviewed her. However, from what I've learned, I think I might have been crushed, because the Lucy that you saw on TV was not the strong, sometimes ruthless businesswoman she was, who ran a studio and demanded perfection. So I think the experience you had with Paris Hilton outside of her home may not have been what I'd experienced had I'd met Lucy. So they say don't meet your heroes, or be prepared to encounter somebody you're not expecting.
Well, her son lives in Vegas, or Boulder City, which is right next to Vegas. So you could come out here. You can meet her son at least. I heard he's.
Well, I have. I got to interview.
Oh,
Lucy
have you?
Kidd.
Okay.
Yeah, I interviewed Lucy Arnaz and Desi Arnaz Jr. Together, and that was a great time. They're lovely, and they told great stories. A lot of their life, they said, was just managing the rights of their mother's likeness. That every day they were getting pitches for Lucy and Desi toilet paper, and they had to decide what was appropriate and what was not. But they were great. Yeah. What's Desi Jr.? Does he have a show there in Vegas, or he's just kind of enjoying retirement?
No, I think he actually owns a dance studio, if I'm not mistaken. But he's actually in Boulder City, but like it's basically right next to Vegas. And we're always in there, and I was like, I kind of want to meet him really bad, because I love Lucy. I love Lucy.
I love Lucy.
Yeah. And so yeah, I've always wanted to meet him too. But he's always walking around in Boulder City and stuff. I have a lot of people that are friends with him and know him. So yeah,
he was a great guy. Really, really talented guy too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah, Desi was on an episode of my favorite show. Besides I Love Lucy, my other favorite show was The Brady Bunch. Were you ever a Brady Bunch fan?
I was at Brady. I've actually interviewed some of them, but I have never watched the whole show. I've watched episodes here and there. But...
Who have you interviewed from The Brady Bunch?
Oh, yeah, actually, quite a few of that. We go to a lot of these events where it's like the Oscars thing, and it's as I'm sure you know, it's like you're interviewing 10,000
Oh,
people.
on red carpet. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh God, who? Oh, I can't
Well,
think. There was a couple that there was one that actually taught an acting class I took.
there was Susan Olsen.
Susan, I think. Oh, does
Susan
that?
Olsen. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I have a lot of
Susan Olsen. Yes, yeah. There's a few of them. So yeah.
Brady Bunch stories in my book, and I'm very excited. I'm
Oh, really?
besides getting to be on your show, I'm also going to be on the Brady Bros podcast, which is
Oh,
Christopher Knight and Barry Williams, who played Greg and Peter Brady. So they're going to be on,
that's
and
cool.
Christopher Knight actually wrote a whole 2-page commentary in my book about what it's like being stalked by a Brady fan such as myself.
I'm sure that's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was wild.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm so honored to have you on. I think you're just such an incredible guy. It was so much fun talking to you. I'd love to have you on again too. I want to read your book so bad. And then hopefully when I read it, we can have you on again too and talk a
Oh,
lot more about your
I would
stories.
love that. Please, please, please. Yeah, it comes out shameless pitch. It comes out July 11th, 7/11. And
Perfect.
you'll be able to find it on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and Kindle and Apple Books. So I would love for you to have a read, and then we can talk about some other shocking things you discover about my scandalous past.
Oh, absolutely. No. So as people are on their way to buy a Slurp or get a free Slurpee from 7-Eleven, they can also get your book on Amazon. So there you go.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was kind of creative day. I didn't realize at the time that 7/11 would also be President Trump's sentencing day. So
My goodness.
two
Wow.
things to look forward- two
Well,
things to look
if you
forward
got
to.
any stories about him, that would be quite the little advertisement for it.
It's not in the book. A lot of it I just didn't have room for. But I did meet Donald Trump once, and I guess we'll keep this non-political, so I won't. I'll reserve my opinions.
Right.
But I did meet him at the Emmys one year, and they were having celebrities recreate old theme songs, and Donald Trump and Megan Mullally from Will and Grace, who played Karen. How funny,
Yeah.
Karen. They were recreating the Green Acres theme song. So Trump was dressed up as kind of a hokey country guy, and I did go up to him afterwards and talk to him about that, and he was lovely. I don't know what happened to him.
Your guess is as good as mine.
I don't know, but everybody's in there. If there's not a full story,
Yeah.
there's a mention of them all. So I hope you'll see some stories about some of your favorites, Corey.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I'm so excited. Like I said, I think you're amazing. And so people can buy it on Amazon. Do you have like social media and website, everything people can follow you?
Yeah, everything's on When You Step Upon a Star. And man, I just launched that When You Step Upon a Star on Instagram. So I need followers there. I do have a lot of followers When You Step Upon a Star on Facebook and Twitter. And so just type in When You Step Upon a Star and it'll take you to my website, whenyoustepUponAstar.com. And you can discover lots of previews and some also additional content that you can find in the book.
What I really think you need to do is I think you need to get on TikTok and you need to start telling your stories, like just make a video of like all your different stories. I think it will bring so much attention to you and like really get people interested in you. I think that'd be genius.
I would love to talk to you more about that. I would love to actually hear about your experience with TikTok and get your advice on how I can make the most of that. Because I think that would be really smart. I think a lot of these stories can be told in quick little tidbits. So
100%.
yeah, let's share our information, Corey. And
okay, yeah, I love talking to you. I'd love to. Hopefully, if you're ever in Vegas, I'm in LA a lot too and stuff. Hopefully, we can meet up sometime too. I think you're great.
I would love that. I'll take you to meet Marilyn Monroe and Dean Martin, and they're all
Perfect.
together. Farrah Fawcett, and they're all in one cemetery. So that's where I take all my relatives to say, we want to meet stars. I say, you'll get to meet a bunch of them. You can take selfies with their tombstones and maybe get an autographed etching, of their.
As long as I don't have to climb trees, I'm good.
I may have you climbing a tree. No promises there.
Okay. No, it was such an honor meeting you and talking to you, and hopefully we'll have you on soon too as well.
So fun, Corey. Thank you for the invitation. I had a blast.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much, William. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, and thank you guys so much for watching. Please, July 11th, go and get his book. 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee and a book. How can you beat it? Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, never give up, always believe, and you'll achieve. Thank you. God bless.